Welcome to the second video in the series of understanding fat in more detail. And today we're going to take a look at the state of ketosis, defining ketosis and understanding it in greater detail. I wanted to start with an interesting survey that was sent out to low-carb, high-fat practitioners in 2018. And they were asked if they thought that the benefits of this way of eating and living were related to ketones being present in the blood or not. And unanimously, they all actually said no. They said that a lot of the benefits comes from all the aspects of the diet, and being in ketosis is just one of them. You're going to get many benefits just because your carbohydrates are lower. Also because you're eating good quality food that is not processed, eating quality protein and good sources of fat. All of these things in themselves are going to give you benefits regardless of whether you're in ketosis or not. So that's something that I'd like you to keep at the back of your mind while we run through everything. So first of all, we want to define ketosis and understand how we measure ketones. Most people will firstly think about measuring ketones in their urine, as this is a very easy way to do it. However, this is extremely unreliable, and I would say to avoid measuring ketones in this way. Another fairly easy way is to measure ketones in your breath. Obviously, you need a breath analyzer, which is not as easy to come by. But again, this is not particularly accurate. And I would say that the third method, which is measuring blood ketones, is definitely the way to go. This involves using a blood ketone meter together with blood ketone strips. If you measure your blood glucose by way of pricking your finger, or you know somebody who does this, you'll be familiar with this method, and it's very much the same, except you use the same meter, except you would use different strips to measure your ketones. Purchasing of the meter and the strips, where can you get these? Pharmacies or online, and they're becoming more and more accessible and easy to find, thanks to this way of eating and way of living becoming more and more popular. So now that you've got the device, when is the best time to measure your ketones? Now we see big variabilities in your ketones on a daily basis, and this is very much related to your hormone levels. So for example, when you wake up in the morning, you have high or raised cortisol levels, and your cortisol is there to wake you up and get you going. So we need this increase in cortisol. But as a result of increased cortisol, we have this temporary increase in insulin. And because of that, usually first thing in the morning, our ketone levels are actually quite low. And so measuring ketones first thing in the morning is actually a pretty useless exercise. So if you're trying to see your highest levels of ketones, the best time to measure in most people is in the later part of the day, late afternoon, and it should be about 2 to 3 hours after eating. Next, we want to define what ketosis is. You're measuring it. What numbers are you actually looking for? Now, there are different types of ketosis. The first type we call nutritional ketosis. And to be in nutritional ketosis, we want to see levels of 0.5 to 3 millimoles per litre. And this is where we can say we are in nutritional ketosis. What are the benefits of being in nutritional ketosis? Well, it's all the things we've been discussing so far. Things like cognitive benefits, that sense of clarity, the fog disappearing, described as having improvement in concentration levels. That would be one benefit. Athletes often want to be or sit in this nutritional ketogenic state and seem to it helps with their ability to perform, particularly for endurance athletes. Weight loss, and I'm going to speak about this in more depth in a second, but generally this is where you'd want to be sitting in terms of your ketones if your goal related to weight or loss of weight. Diabetics, if you have type 2 diabetes and you were aiming to be in ketosis, this is the level that you would want to sit at. So that's your nutritional ketogenic state to begin with. But then we can step it up a level, and we have another state which goes beyond 3 and up to about 6 millimoles, and this is what we refer to as therapeutic ketosis. Now, who should be aiming to be at these sorts of levels? Well, as the name suggests, this is for particular types of things going on in the body. A good example is an individual who suffers from epileptic seizures might want to push their levels up a bit higher to have better control, or less frequent, or rely on medication less if their ketones can be that little bit higher and sit in this therapeutic zone. Now, I will emphasize right now that I'm not suggesting a ketogenic diet is here to cure cancer or is the answer, but there have been some great studies, particularly with brain cancer, to show that when people have therapeutic levels of ketones, the outcome of their treatment is improved. And so using a ketogenic diet that takes you up to therapeutic levels in conjunction with traditional therapies may be beneficial. Also, another therapeutic application would be for neurological conditions such as bipolar disease, migraines, dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. We've seen the start of research in this area, and all of them are suggesting this little bit higher level of ketones in order to see the benefits. Now, I said I'm going to speak a little bit more about weight loss and ketones because this is a tricky one and one that I know that many of you will be interested in. I know that the main reason for a lot of people doing this challenge is to lose weight. And you might be thinking that the higher your ketones, the more weight you should be losing. And your logic is basically, if I'm burning loads of fat, then I'll be seeing higher ketones, and this will translate to fat loss or weight loss on the scales, right? Well, this is not always the case. Unfortunately, weight loss is always the complicated one. You see, over the years, I've seen people with very high ketone levels and they are not losing weight. And in some instances, very few, but there have been, they've actually put on weight. So higher levels of ketones don't automatically translate to greater weight loss. And it's important to know this and to acknowledge this and understand why. So let's take a look at what's happening. And so we can prevent this, of course, from happening to you. Remember that we have fat in our bodies and we have fat in food. And we have the ability to use both sources. However, it is much easier for your body to use the fat that is coming in, so from the food, rather than having to dip into your fat stores. So you will always use the fat coming in first. If you are eating a fairly large amount of fat, you may not be giving your body the chance to use any stored fat. So you will see high ketone levels because you are breaking down and burning fat, but all the fat is coming directly from your food and not from your body stores. So in essence, you are eating too much fat to allow your body to have to go and access fat in storage. And so, yes, your ketones will be really high, but you will not actually be burning and using your fat on your body. You'll recall that one of my guidelines is eat according to your hunger. And maybe this sounds like a really simple or simplistic guideline, but it is actually probably the most important guideline of all. Because if we can truly do this without question, achieving weight loss and getting the amount of fat that you should be eating to achieve weight loss will become more straightforward. So keep listening. Getting the amount of fat right actually comes down to getting your carbohydrates right. I'm going to say that again. Getting the amount of fat right, so being sure that you don't eat too much fat, so that you don't just use the fat in the food and you actually start burning your own fat, comes down to getting the amount of carbohydrate that you eat right. So how does this work? When your carbs are low enough, your hormones will work the way they should, and you will become excellent at controlling the amount of fat and protein you should be having. I know that this might sound pretty foreign to some of you, and maybe even a bit crazy, but when it happens, you'll know it. If your carbs are too high, then your hormones don't align, and it's difficult to control the amount of fat and protein in your diet. So what I have done in this challenge is set guidelines so that carbohydrates are really low to begin with for everyone. So trying to give everyone a good chance to get their carbohydrates low enough. I know this is a difficult concept to get your head around, so this diagram may help to explain things. What this shows is the macronutrient dynamics for one person over a period of a year. What we need to acknowledge from this is the only thing that was prescriptive here was the amount of carbohydrates, which is represented in blue. So carbs started really low and increased slightly at each stage. Fat and protein were eaten according to hunger, so there was no prescription around the amount of fat or protein at all. They were basically told to eat until they felt satisfied in terms of their fat and protein. By getting carbohydrate right and then just simply following hunger, fat and protein intake was established naturally. So look what happened. As weight loss occurred, less and less fat became available from body stores. And so instinctively, and yes, instinctively this happened, the amount of fat in the diet began to increase. And you can see this represented on the diagram. And eventually, when they got to maintenance phase, the amount of fat or the amount of total calories dictated by fat met their energy expenditure, and so their weight remained unchanged. But the key in all of this was getting carbohydrates low enough, not in restricting fat. That will happen naturally if you get the carbs right. So if weight loss is your goal, ask yourself the following question. Are my carbs low enough? Are there perhaps too many orange list items sneaking in? Maybe you're having berries and cream every night, or you're having a few too many nuts, or maybe you've made a low carb loaf using almond meal and orange list items and you're having a slice every day. Maybe you need to pull back on some of these things. Maybe for you, the green list is where 95 or even more % of your diet needs to come from right now. So at this stage, if you are still really struggling to work out your hunger cues, you are struggling to go for extended periods of time between meals, you're looking for snacks still, then your focus needs to be more from the green list. That's how you make this decision right now. Less from the orange, more from the green. When you get your carbs low enough, when you get your carbs right for you at this point in your journey, then everything else will start working without you having to think about it. So if this is you right now, it most likely means then that you are having more carbs than you can personally tolerate at this stage. Keep in mind that your tolerance will improve. It will change over time. That's part of one of the benefits that will happen. So you'll be able to have more carbs over time. But right now, you may need to pull them back. And if you pull them back, you will instinctively get that fat right. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense to you. So now that we understand a little bit more about ketones, there are some people who would want to boost their ketone levels. Maybe you're an athlete and you'd like to do it to help you, you're a runner on your longer runs, or you're a cyclist on your longer sessions, or you just want to give it a go and see how you feel. Does it help you at work to concentrate, to lift the fog at 3 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon? Or you just want to have a bit of an experiment and see what will happen to your health. How can you go about boosting your ketone levels? There are a number of ways. And one of them, is by using exogenous ketones. These are basically your ketone supplements that boost your ketone levels almost instantaneously. So you can imagine if you have a child who's suffering from epilepsy, and if their levels sit at 4, their seizures are really well controlled, but as soon as they start dipping, they are not. But it's very difficult to control the carbohydrate level in a child's diet. So now we see the role of exogenous ketones. They can help to boost ketone levels and help in this situation. Exogenous ketones are not my favorite. There's still a lot that is unknown about them. There's a lot of research that needs to take place. But in essence, I always go back to one of my guidelines, which is, of course, just eat real food. And as I pointed out, these are supplements. And so we are unnaturally lifting our ketone levels. There is a thought that the benefits of ketones are not in the ketones themselves, or not only in the ketone bodies themselves, but also in the process of conversion. So when we convert fat and we get the end result as ketones, along that journey, we are getting some benefits as well. So it comes back to the best way to do this is, of course, to just follow a lower carbohydrate diet and boost your ketone levels. But if there are situations where you really need to, and you would benefit from an artificially raised level of ketones, then this might be something that you do. Finally, and something to be aware of with exogenous ketones, is that tolerance can be an issue. A lot of people don't tolerate exogenous ketones very well. From a number of points of view, it might be gut issues, or it might be as a result of a large excretion of fluid and electrolytes. When we have higher levels of ketones, we do have more losses of fluid and electrolytes, and this could become an issue. So keep those things in mind. The next way of boosting ketone levels is by using something called MCT. Now, MCT is a medium chain triglyceride. All the other fats that we consume in our diets are long chain triglycerides. So medium chain triglycerides, they get absorbed and broken down really, really fast. And so the ketones appear in our blood very, very quickly. So you can get this massive boost of energy, and all the benefits very quickly when you include something like MCT. But some people describe this as almost being quite unsettling or unnerving. I've heard people describe having MCT, they feel like they've had 10 espressos all at once. Now, you can see the application here for athletes, of course. If you need that energy for performance, absolutely, MCT could be what you're after. But if you're just going to work and going to be sitting at a desk all day on the computer, you might feel quite unsettled from this amount of abundant energy. Tolerance, again, can also be an issue. Lots of people suffer from gut issues when they have MCT, probably at least 50 or 60% of people who try MCT. If you do try it, my suggestion is to try very small amounts, like a teaspoon first, and then slowly build that up to find what you can tolerate. Coconut oil is the third way to boost ketones, and the reason why is it's part MCT, so part medium chain triglycerides and part long chain triglycerides. So it's sort of a bit of a happy medium. So you're not going to get the intensity that you get from MCT, but you still might get, you will get higher levels of ketones as compared to having just pure long chain triglyceride type fats in your diets. So there you have it. That is basically the lowdown on ketones. I hope you can apply that to your own individual situation and decide where you sit on all of this and what is going to work for you in your life to give you the best results and what you are after.